I'd like to welcome everyone to our electronic council meeting. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing, and the majority of councillors who are participating are doing so electronically. There are some present in the council chambers, and present today we have Elizabeth Clark, Sue Foxton, Helen Jowett, and myself. I would now I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gathered today is the land traditionally used by the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, and the Neutral people. I also acknowledge the enduring presence and the deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. I now ask Chris Fletcher to do the roll call.
Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Erb.
Present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Galloway.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Jaworski.
Here.
Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Kiefer.
Present.
Councillor Lawrence.
Here.
Councillor McGarry.
Present.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Strickland.
Here.
Councillor Vervanabik.
Present.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Conflict of Interest Act. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. I have an indirect pecuniary interest in the consideration of item 12, Committee of the Whole, Recommendation 1, the face covering bylaw and code of use bylaw, as my spouse is proprietor of a non-medical mask business.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yes, I too would like to declare an indirect pecuniary conflict of interest due to the nature of my employment with Vandal Construction for Committee of the Whole report item number 8, A and B.
Thank you. Duly noted. No presentations, no petitions. We do have two delegations. Before commencing with hearing delegations, I would like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. Please leave your video camera turned off and your microphone audio muted until you are called upon to speak. Delegations will be allocated 5 minutes to speak, and I will provide a 1-minute warning reminder when your 5 minutes is nearing completion. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed. You are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast live via YouTube.
You missed the special council session.
Oh. We're backing up here, folks.
Yeah, the special council.
I would like to convene this special council meeting. And again, welcome everyone to our electronic special council meeting. So delegations, I apologize. I will finish your instructions in a minute. So most councillors are participating electronically. Those present in the chamber, again, are Councillor Clark, Foxton, and Jowett, and myself. A special meeting is required to pass procedural bylaw amendments prior to the passing of the debenture bylaws at a regular council meeting related to giving notice for the holding of electronic meetings. The notice is considered to have been provided at the August 11th council meeting, and the procedural bylaw amendment is being passed at this meeting. In an attempt to speed things up, we have assigned a mover and a seconder, and I will read these out. Then I will state the result of the vote. Do you need to do another roll call? Okay, so we know who's here, which is all of us. This motion is moved by Councillor Jaworski and seconded by Councillor Jowett. Please use your yes and no buttons to vote. And those in the chamber can raise their hands to the positive. So this is a special council meeting to approve the debentures. So all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Well, now we have to enact the bylaws. Okay, so now I would, we'll get this right sooner or later. I'd like to, a motion to enact the bylaws first, second, and third readings. This is moved by Councillor Erb and seconded by Councillor Foxton, that the bylaw to amend bylaw 00-031 is amended, being the region's bylaw governing proceedings of council and committees. Please use your buttons if you're participating electronically, or raise your hand in the affirmative if you are in favor. That vote is carried. Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. This is moved by Councillor Galloway, seconded by Councillor Harris. Again, please use your buttons for yes or no, and raise your hand if you are supportive of this motion in the chamber. That is carried. It's what happens when you have all this paper and you turn one of the pages. So we are now in our regular council meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. We have already noted the roll call and the declarations of pecuniary interest of Councillor Jaworski and Councillor Harris. And back to the delegations. So I would ask you to leave your video and your microphones muted until you are called to speak. Delegations will be allowed 5 minutes to speak, and I will provide a 1-minute warning reminder when your 5 minutes is nearing completion. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed, and you are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting webcast live via YouTube. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillors, staff, or delegations, derogatory statements about councillor, staff, or others, turning your camera on at an inappropriate time, and hate speech or defamatory comments. I will now call upon the delegations as they were listed in the agenda. Our first delegation is Martin Johnson, President of CUPE 1656, regarding contracting out of winter operations services and closing of Phillipsburg yards. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Martin Johnson, President of CUPE 1656, for outside workers region of Waterloo. I'm here today to tell you about the dangers of contracting out public services. Our members are disappointed that business to the staffing regional services adequately. The decision before you is to contract out worker control routes and mothball a regional yard. This decision is being made without the consideration of key risk factors and mothball a regional yard. Visitors in a rush because of the winter season will soon be upon us. While there's a place for the private sector in our economy, when it comes to critical public services, there are some things that are just too important. While there's a place for the private sector in our economy, scored right now as we are challenged by this global pandemic. When it comes to this decision scored right now as we are challenged, everyone certainly understands the importance when 6 workers is a CUPE member across Canada. Well, there's a place for the member across Canada. We know all too well what is required in the past 6 months. It is without debate that our members helped the region challenged by this global survive the initial part of the crisis. We did it proudly and with a sense of duty to our communities. In fact, our union represents about 85,000 members in municipalities in every part of the province. We are indeed experts on municipal service delivery. I do not want to see the members I represent go from pandemic heroes to zeros. It is the local sense that this decision has a false urgency to it, and we question the process that was followed around equipment for these positions. It is hard for us to believe that the regional jobs cannot be filled, especially in the context of question the process that was followed. There are complexities to fill the seasonal positions with specialized skills required, such as drivers with licenses and requirements as such. However, we strongly acknowledge there are complexities to functions with sponsor just before the first frost. Surely we knew well in advance that staffing the service would be a requirement. We also want to alert council to the risk and challenges of contracting out, particularly with this service. It was just this week that the City of Ottawa saw 3 separate companies be charged with fraud. The allegations are that these companies collected fees but provided no service in return. It's also important to note that the investigation and ongoing criminal proceedings started because the public was complaining. Some of these companies paid clients paid for. The snow removal was not done and allegedly received little or no service. The 3 companies are all facing multiple fraud charges. Unfortunately, this is not a new challenge for this service. The provincial government experienced so many problems with private contractors for public roads. The Auditor General weighed in with a special report on their experience. The Auditor General made the following points in 2015. First, the highways that were not cleared as fast. Secondly, some results showed an increase in road fatalities in 2013 where winter conditions factored in accidents. Thirdly, companies that were low bidders on contracts didn't necessarily have the equipment required. And the lack of equipment required the province to provide, which then drove up costs. Poor service, like not using materials, examples like salt and sand, this resulted in fines on these companies. Adding to this calamity, which was in 2016, the province had only collected $693,000 in fines, which at that time totaled $3.25 million. These are shocking examples that should form how this decision is made. In fact, one of the most overlooked costs of contracting out is the ongoing
Mr. Johnson.
contract compliance. Often, yes, they're signed and there's a hidden cost and such. There's been a significant move in municipalities across the globe to bring services back. We know that delivering and coordinating municipal services is not easy. We're out there every day experiencing that. We do want to see the best possible services delivered, though, while to the residents. And certainly not accepting more risk, less control. At the end of the day, we are all responsible for our communities. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to compute, and I trust you will take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. I see no questions, so thank you for coming to state your case to council today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
The next delegation is Jay Yondu from Kitchener. He wants to talk about the shelter pad installation, Grand River Transit Stop 4107 at 3015 King Street East, Kitchener. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Sorry, my name is coming up under my wife's, and I'm using her laptop, so I want to apologize for that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again tonight. May I share an image with the council?
You may begin.
I would like to just clarify something that the staff has missed on their report. I have drawn a yellow circle where the current temporary bus stop is located in front of my business. We are willing to work with the region on some sort of land swap and or easement at this location. With King Street being such a busy road, we have not witnessed any riders crossing the road illegally, but instead do walk to the intersection at King and Fairway to cross over. A5, the red circle that's over here, is our preferred location for a bus stop, but we are willing to work with the GRT staff on alternative recommendations. That's all I have to say for tonight.
Thank you for your intervention. Again, I see no questions. So, Council, I would turn your attention to the report TS-TRS-20-18.2. This is moved by Councillor Kiefer, seconded by Councillor
Hey,
Lorentz.
Chair Redmond, I did my hand up there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Harris, go ahead.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jandua. I did have an opportunity to go out and visit the business. And and had a chance to speak with you on this matter. I know there's several options before us tonight, and I'm just wondering, what your, I guess, perspective is, and if this location that staff is recommending is the one that you perhaps envisioned.
The one that we had envisioned was a little bit further towards River Road, and I believe the staff is trying to put the stop a little bit closer to King, and that will hinder our inventory. So our road visibility for our automobiles won't be visible as much. Put that in the middle of our lot. So basically where the current temporary bus stop is where we're willing to work with the region on some sort of land swap and or easement.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I mean, obviously, to my colleagues, I would, and staff, and I know they've gone back and forth with Mr. Jandu on several occasions. I'm hopeful that the recommendation tonight in the report would allow for some compromise, perhaps on either side or both sides leading into January, and that, we can put this matter to bed. That would be a solution that would be, good for everyone. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway.
Well, I would like to get a little bit of clarity from Mr. Jandu on this, because at the committee meeting, we approved moving the bus stop to the alternate location. Now you're indicating that either you've changed your mind on that location or staff had it incorrect in terms of where that location was. Your original concern was, of course, the impact that the shelter was going to have in front of your building. And council seems to be in agreement to moving it away from the building. And now you're indicating that you're worried about how it might impact your inventory. I guess I'm concerned about whether or not, are you saying that you will not cooperate in giving the region the land that it requires in the location that you are now objecting to? Because the way the motion is worded, if that particular location is not consummated, then it goes back to in front of the building. So it seems to me that you may have a choice to make here.
I think there might be a little bit of confusion just on where the location that we have offered the region. And I guess this is something that I and the staff can go back and forth on. And I just want to clarify on the image where the current temporary bus stop is located, because it wasn't indicated on the staff's report. So whether it's a few meters this way or a few meters that way, we would prefer it to be closer to where the temporary bus stop is. And this is something that we've said from the beginning, that we're willing to work with the region, give land, swap, adjacent to where the temporary bus stop is.
But there comes a point, Mr. Jandu, where the bus stop would be too far removed from the intersection, and it becomes a matter of how far the riders will walk to get to a particular location. So I'm going to have to ask staff what their when your delegation is done to see what staff are thinking in terms of the location that you've circled on that particular map.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's the stop that I believe it's been there for about eight or 9 months already. Just the temporary stop.
Councillor Galloway, are you asking for a response from staff at this point?
Well, Madam Chair, as soon as you're done with the delegation, yeah, I would like to hear from staff, yes.
Okay, who would like to take this? Mr. Schmidt, welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to pass it on to Mr. Zink, who is on the line and has been dealing with this issue most directly.
Mr. Zink?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jandu and I had a good discussion on this topic very recently, and the situation comes down to a location that staff prefer, which is the compromise location. We'd like to see it just past the access driveway. It's shown on the diagram circled as A6. Mr. Jandu is correct. The temporary stop is located in, I believe, in the yellow area he's referring to. This would have been a location that we put the temporary flag there while we were looking at installing the shelter and pad at the location adjacent to his building. So that was a temporary location. So Councillor Galloway's correct. Transit riders prefer the shortest walk when transferring and or connecting to their stop. So the closer we are to the intersection, the better for staff, in staff's perspective and for customers. So my suggestion was to Mr. Jandu that we would meet on site and come up with a solution to those two differences. His interest in keeping the stop further away from his inventory and further towards the rail alignment, and staff's interest in keeping it close to the intersection. Failing that, we'll probably arm wrestle to come up with the proper location.
Councillor Galloway, does that answer your question?
Well, it does, except that the way the motion is put together is it's either the location that we agreed to last Tuesday or the original location. But I was under the impression that the location that we approved last Tuesday was in fact the temporary bus, where the temporary bus stop had been, or is currently. So is it that staff have changed their mind, Mr. Zink, in terms of where it would like the bus stop? Because I thought we were told that it was the one that we were discussing last Tuesday was where the temporary bus stop was.
Mr. Zink?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, that was not the intent of the conversation. Staff's interest in the compromise location was always about a bus length past the access way. The presentation Mr. Jandu did showed one stop, perhaps causing some confusion, at least in my mind, which was a stop near Hefner Toyota. Staff definitely was not interested in that location, as it's 200 meters from the intersection. So the motion is actually crafted in a way that it comes up with a location agreeable, suitable to the commissioner. So there is some room for latitude between the two locations under that motion, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Harris.
Just to follow up on that, I too was under the understanding that that temporary location was in fact what was going to be put forward to us, as Councillor Galloway, I think, also perhaps assumed, and I know what they say about assuming, but is that something that we can embed into this motion and put it to bed?
Well, I would have to defer to the clerk, but I would think that's an amendment to the motion before us. Mr. Schmidt.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think there's some room for discussion with Mr. Sandu on the location, but only looking, our preference is what was in our original report. So our preference is a location in front of his building, closer to the intersection. I think given the impacts that Mr. Sandu feels that will have in his business, we're ready to look at some options essentially between his driveway and the railway track. The exact location of that, we need to have some discussion with him on exactly what would work and what would not work for both of us. I think we would be able to reach agreement on a location there. I think the issue and the reason that we were looking at if we aren't able to get the land transfer, or if for some reason there's a hiccup or problem in doing that, that was more the reason for the fallback position than an inability on our part to find a location that's agreeable to both of us. The location that staff prefer is entirely on the region of right-of-way, and we can do that without acquiring any additional lands.
So I'm going to suggest, it sounds like there is a lack of clarity I would entertain a motion to defer this, not to encourage Mr. Jandu and Peter Zink to arm wrestle in the future, but suggesting that this was to occur before January 1st, 2021. So I'm wondering if council would be amenable. I would be open to a motion to defer this till next month to get clarity and pin down this motion. Is there any appetite to do that?
Or I would agree with that.
Okay, so I see Councillor Galloway and Councillor Lorenz. So we have a
Paris as well.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I would be. I would also be open to that. And I mean, I guess my question back to staff, and maybe that can happen for next month, is, you know what, has there been any consultation done with ridership that are now currently at that temporary spot that, you know, feel that they don't, you know, that if it's a temporary spot now that they're used to that particular location, you know, why not that location perhaps, if it is temporary, becoming eventually the permanent location? So
I guess that would be a request of staff. We have a motion to defer to next month in front of us. Mr. Zink, can this come back in a month?
Through you, Madam Chair, of course, we can bring this back. There's still time to have the works done for the spring. We'll have to do a site visit and return back with additional information.
Thank you. So there's a motion before us to defer this bus pad. I would ask, I see no more speakers, so please indicate your support for this motion to defer with your icons if you're remote, and raise hands in the chamber. That is carried. Thank you. That will come back, Mr. Jandu. So we look forward to a successful outcome. Moving on, the minutes of the previous meetings. We'll now have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meetings as listed. Are there any comments on the minutes? These are moved by Councillor McGarry and seconded by Councillor Nowak. They are the closed Board of Health, August 20, 2020, closed Council, August 20, 2020, Council, August 20, 2020, Special Council meeting, September the 15th, 2020, closed Committee of the Whole, September the 15th, 2020, and Committee of the Whole, September the 15th, 2020. I'd ask you to please indicate your support for these minutes using your icons remotely and raising your hands in the affirmative in the chamber. Thank you. That is carried. Colleagues, the council information package for September the 16th, 2020 was distributed electronically. Does anyone have anything from that correspondence they would like to highlight it or bring forward at this time? Seeing no speakers, I would entertain a motion to go into Committee of the Whole to consider the reports. This motion is moved by Councillor Shaw, seconded by Councillor Strickland, that the committee go into Committee of the Whole to consider reports. Please use your yes and no buttons and indicate your support by raising your hand if you're in the chambers. That is carried. Colleagues, we have one motion to accept the finance reports, items A through F and H through I. Item G will be dealt with separately. If anyone has any comments, please raise your hand. Councillor Nowak. Joe, you're still on mute. Do you want to speak to any of these items?
Sorry. Yes, I'd like to speak to report COR-TRY 2097. I would like to make an amendment in that report when the time is appropriate.
We're going to take that separately, Joe, so I'll call on you. We're doing the rest of the finance reports other than that one. We're going to take that one separately.
Okay, I couldn't find G on I'm working two mice here right now.
Hey, I was on the wrong council meeting. You're forgiven.
Thank you.
So these finance reports have been moved by Councillor Urbanovic, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. I would ask you to use your icons if you're voting remotely, or indicate your support if you're in the chamber. That is carried. Thank you. Now we are dealing with item G of the finance reports. This is COR-TRY-20-97. This is the extension of existing Steeden Evans winter maintenance contract, and I believe Councillor Nowak wants to speak to this one.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Yeah, I will be proposing at an appropriate time an amendment to the report. I'll give you a little bit of background. The report states that the three cities were asked if they could help, even though none of the roads in question fall within the boundaries of the three cities. When the city said they could not help through their existing maintenance contract with the region, I had to wonder why the townships were not asked if they could potentially help. So if this is to be the new norm going forward, and that the idea of outsourcing regional winter maintenance, I would hope the region would be open to entering into an agreement like what they have with the three cities with the town. This could act as a trial, and if it goes smoothly, eventually more regional roads could be the responsibility of local municipalities. This would allow the townships to grow in their current operations. Some of the benefits. So I believe the taxpayers across the region could see efficiencies in the way winter is handled, because instead of township trucks traveling regional roads to get to township roads, we could be maintaining all roads. This would cut down on emissions as well, because we would have less trucks on the road, less deadheading and burning of fuel. There'd be less confusion for the residents. How many times do calls come in from the residents in either the region or the township that have to be redirected? There is a notion that the township staff are somehow less capable than the region or contractor staff. I want to reiterate, we receive the same training, have the same equipment, and follow the same legislation as the region. As a matter of fact, our staff have won the annual truck rodeo 2 years in a row. And in fact, the region just hired one of our staff. So the quality of work performed would be consistent with the regional guidelines. The 4 rural municipalities were allocated some funds from the province to find efficiencies. And we are now considering a review of public works. As part of that review, I would like to see us work collaboratively with the region in the best interest of the taxpayers to see if there's a more cost-effective way to provide this winter maintenance. Having said that, would it be appropriate now, Madam Chair, to offer my amendment?
It would.
So the amendment would read that the regional municipality of Waterloo direct regional staff to review and evaluate options for the provision of winter maintenance in the townships, including private sector, region of Waterloo, and local municipal options, and report back to regional council prior to the end of March. And that's the amendment, Madam Chair. Just to point out that it's not binding. All it really does is open up the discussion, which I think is long overdue when it comes to working collaboratively with on our roadways. So that's my amendment, Madam Chair.
So, Councillor Nowak, my understanding was that that was actually an amendment to the main motion. So the motion as written would still go forward, that recommends the regional municipality of Waterloo enter into a contract agreement with Steeden Evans for the winter maintenance of certain regional roads as an extension to existing contract T2012-119 for 1 year term with an option to renew for 1 additional year. At an annual cost of $1.39 million plus applicable taxes, and you want yours added to that rather than replacing that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
There is more to the main motion too. As written, colleagues, that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo authorize the Commissioner of Transport and Environmental Services to execute the licensing agreement with Steeden Evans Limited for the use of the region's Phillipsburg Yard on Nafsinger Road for the sole purpose of winter maintenance services supplied to the region of Waterloo in a form satisfactory to the regional solicitor. So in addition to that would be Councillor Nowak's amendment, which is to take under consideration possible winter maintenance that could be supplied by the township, correct?
Correct.
So I have Councillor Nowak as the mover and Councillor Shantz. Councillor Shantz, are you agreeable with that addition to the main motion?
Yes, I am, but I do have a question maybe of clarification for Councillor Nowak. So the second part of the recommendation as written says that there is possibility of renewal for an additional term. So I think however that ends up getting worded in the contract, the intent would be to leave that open as a possibility that perhaps the township would take that over the next year. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, Councillor Shantz, that'll be a part of the discussion going forward. Yeah, I think that option should remain there. I mean, if we can't, put together a program that would be reasonable and at least get the conversation going with the region in that time period, then we can't leave the roads unserviced. So this could take beyond March, the end of March, before we come up with a final plan. So I'm not meaning to. It's the option is just there, and there's a possibility that we could come up with something, and then that option would be wouldn't be maintained.
So I guess the question is, or the caution is, the wording of the contract with Steeden Evans then as to whether that optional year is that our option or their option.
Thank you for that question. I think I would look to Deb Arnold or Mr. Schmidt just for clarification, or Mr. Dyer. What would that option look like? Would that be accommodated with the addition of Councillor Nowak?
So perhaps, Madam Chair, I could give this one a try. The option would be the region's option to extend for another term. And I think the intent would be to undertake the review as indicated in advance of needing to make that decision.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I have Councillor Lorentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question from staff and maybe a comment. So how long have we been using temporary workers to do this kind of work?
Mr. Schmidt?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the exact year, but it has been 15 or 20 years or more. We have done this with, so it's essentially, it is call it a balancing issue. We have a need for more workers during the November to March period that we don't necessarily, or in the past, have not needed for the full year. So we have hired temporary staff to basically fill that need in the winter months.
So provincial standards would mean that the townships, if they were going to do this work, would have to maintain the regional roads, get them down to bare ground, and keep them there before they went in and did the other plowing in the township. Is that correct?
That is the way that our contract with Steeden Evans is. They're required to do our roads first. I think any discussion as far as other options moving forward, we'd have to look at the specific requirements, but generally our roads are of a higher level and need to be cleared first.
Right. So I think that's a provincial standard, isn't it? That regional roads, because I used to recall former Chair Sealing bragging about how the region would plow the regional roads and the townships would just plow the local streets, and he would never have to worry about getting stuck because he'd wake up at 8 in the morning even after a snowstorm and the street was plowed. Well, in Kitchener, I can go 3 or 4 days before somebody comes to plow my street because Kitchener staff, and I'm sure Waterloo and Cambridge as well, their responsibility is to keep the regional roads open and then go in and do the local streets. So I don't know if the township's aware of that, but it might be a pretty good deal for us. But I don't think their constituents would be too happy if all of a sudden the township plows aren't showing up for a day or two. But I'm happy to take a look at it. I have no problem with it. I think it's interesting. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Nowak and then Councillor Strickland. Go ahead, Councillor Nowak.
Yeah, just a reply to Councillor Lawrence's concerns. Our director of public works had worked for the city of Kitchener, and he assures me that he's very familiar with that regulation, and we've discussed this just recently with Thomas and with staff, and we're well aware that the regional roads will have to be done first. And that would have to be included in any discussions that we have with the region. So we believe that that's still doable, but we need some time to wade through this a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I could support the amendment. I think it's fairly benign, just in terms of asking staff to include discussions with the townships in the review after the conclusion of the contract with Seed Evans. But I was a little taken aback with Councillor Nowak's comments with respect to a view that I don't know where it came from on inferiority of personnel in the township in order to do the work. I don't think that's the issue. I don't know where that came from. But the real issue would be, similar to what Councillor Lawrence is saying, is the capacity of the township to meet the needs of their urban settlement areas at the same time as meet the needs of the regional road network, which, as you know, in the township is quite extensive. So any review of this sort needs to take into consideration the idea of any contractor, be it private sector or be it another government agency's ability to deliver the plowing of the roads in a reasonable fashion and at a reasonable cost. So I'm sure staff will take that into consideration in the review. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through the chair. I brought this up last week at committee, and I can reassure you, a lot of times I talk to the plow guys in North Dumfries, and a lot of times they are actually driving on the unpaved regional roads, the uncleared regional roads, to get to our roads, and it frustrates them that they can't just put their plow down and do it at the same time when they're going to their next township road. We have an extensive number of regional roads, and our plows are intersecting with them on a regular basis, and they could be probably cleared a lot faster if we could put the blade down.
Thank you. So I see no other speakers. We have a mover and a seconder for the motion as written, and then the addendum, which provides for a Public Works review and information about possibly Wellesley plowing regional roads to come back to this council. Township roads, all townships? Okay. Councillor Galloway.
No, I voted.
Oh, you voted? There you go. Okay, could the rest of you catch up with Councillor Galloway and please vote positive or negative and raise your hand if you're supportive in the chamber. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Committee of the Whole, we have reports attached and marked, and we're now going to start a vote to accept Committee of the Whole summary. Items 1 and 8 will be taken separately due to pecuniary interests. So other than those items, this is moved by Councillor Strickland and seconded by Councillor Erb. So I'd ask you to use your yes and no buttons and raise your hand if you're supportive of these finance motions. That is carried. So colleagues, we're now on page, well, my page 16. I don't know what page you're on. We now will vote on item 1 for the summary. This is moved by Councillor Rents and seconded by Councillor Verbanovich. This is the face covering that Councillor Jaworski declared a conflict of. I see no discussion, so all those in favor, please raise your hand. Use your icons if you're voting remotely.
Is it too late to ask for a recorded vote on the face covering?
Yeah.
I think
Never
with
too
the
late.
indulgence of council, we can ask for a recorded vote.
Isn't it recorded anyways?
Pardon? We can do a recorded vote when it comes to the bylaws, Councillor Ravanovich, if that's acceptable.
Sure.
Okay.
Or you know what? If it's unanimous now, the minutes can just reflect that. That's fine as well.
Well, I think Councillor Jaworski is the only one that has a conflict. So Tim, did that pass? Okay, so it's unanimous. It passed.
Thank you.
The next item is item 8, and this is on the property known as 215 Lexington Road in Waterloo. This is moved by Councillor Foxton and seconded by Councillor Strickland, and this was the item that Councillor Harris had a conflict on. So I see no speakers, so all those in favor, please use your yes and no icons voting remotely. Those in the council chambers will vote in the affirmative, if you're in the affirmative. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Lochner, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. So under the regional clerk, we have the schedule 2021 schedule of council and committee meetings. This has been moved by Councillor Galloway and seconded by Councillor Clark, that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo adopt the 2021 council and committee meeting schedule attached to as report PDL-CAS-20-09 as Appendix A dated September the 23rd, 2020. Councillor Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm that when I read those meeting dates, that we no longer are having a summer break.
That's correct. Mrs. Fletcher, do you want to speak to this?
That's correct. This is a 12-year calendar with a meeting every month.
12 years, that would
Or
be one hell of a
12-month calendar.
It just feels
sorry.
like 12 years. It's actually 12
I'm feeling
months,
like
Sean.
it's 12 years, but that's
That's
okay.
the new term, Sean. That's the new term.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't like we've been, except for this year because of COVID, and given the volume of work that we do over the course of a year, that break has been in place since I think the region was formed, for at least the 20 plus years that I've been on council. So I was a little surprised to see it simply in a committee meeting, a schedule of committee meetings without having any discussion with council on how we would prefer to have our meetings scheduled over the course of a year. So I personally am, the work is the work, but I think we should have a discussion rather than just put this up. So I don't know how you want to handle it, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to defer it to further discussion. Maybe the rest of my colleagues don't care, but I do certainly know that having that break helps with refreshing our minds and our body in order to do what we have to do, sitting through what will likely be numerous more lengthy Zoom meetings. And in the past, it has never affected or negatively impaired our ability to get work done. So I'm just a little surprised to see that being taken out of our schedule without any discussion whatsoever. So I would leave it in your hands, but I would not support that committee schedule as presented until at least we had a discussion around the continuation or discontinuation of the traditional summer break.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Strickland. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. I had concerns for a different reason, and I did talk to Ms. Fletcher, and I'm a little more comfortable with them. My concern is that we've taken out 2 committee meetings, and because of our workload, I can see that having a real impact, either making the existing once a month heavier. We don't like addendums, so will stuff get dropped or will it get pushed to the next committee meeting? Now that we've said that we're shutting down at 4 o'clock regardless, I can see some problems, especially if wave 2's coming and we're going to have even more discussions and more things happening. Life is fluid. If this was pro-COVID-19, I don't think I'd have as much concern. But after COVID, the start of COVID-19, it's been pretty intense. I have to, sorry, Sean, I usually agree with you, but on this, on the July one, I don't have a problem with that one. My council meets in July. I think a lot of us do, and that still gives you 3 weeks off before the next meeting. And I'm always around anyways. July has always worried me because it's our busiest time in road work and construction work and planning. It's a pretty heavy duty time. And I don't even like my council being off at that time because there's just too much going on. But those are my thoughts. I am concerned about the workload. But to be fair to the clerk, Ms. Fletcher informed me that this is going to be reviewed in March. So it's only going to be implemented for 3 months, and then we have a chance to review it then. And that made me feel a lot comfortable too.
Thank you. I do have other speakers, and we're certainly in the hands of council. I'm wondering if Mrs. Fletcher could just give a little bit of rationale as to the new schedule, and then I will be happy to recognize speakers.
So as outlined in the report, this was an attempt to look at some of the things that go on during council and committee meetings in particular that have put some stresses in the system from time to time. And, certainly this is about trying to be more robust with respect to the actual activities that council is involved in, and as well as to try and think strategically about what's important for council from a policy perspective that they need to be involved in. One of the things that has happened over a number of years is this whole kind of issue about Super Tuesdays on committee days where we have to do everything on a Tuesday. And, that has not necessarily been easy to accomplish and has often resulted in longer term meetings. So one of the ideas, no different than we went to a 3-week schedule, and going to a monthly schedule is to provide you with some other opportunities about when you might want to meet either as advisory committees, steering team meetings, or how we schedule public meetings, etc., with respect to the activities of council. So having a committee meeting and a council meeting every month doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have a special council meeting, that we can't schedule a particular public meeting that is required, but we don't have to load it on the existing Tuesday meeting schedule, which has sometimes proved extremely problematic. I know that there have been some standing committees, smaller standing committees, that we've not been able to do because we haven't had people to be able to attend those meetings because they have other commitments, etc. So this is trying to clear some time up to do some of those things, as well as be more strategic in what we're bringing forward to council. So it's part of that bigger picture too about how we're streamlining council processes, including the schedule.
Thank you, Mrs. Fletcher. I have Councillor Bravanovich next.
Thank you very much, Chair Redmond. I do understand what staff is suggesting here, and I think there is some merit in exploring that. I do tend to agree, though, with Councillor Strickland on the July-August perspective. As we know, we don't stop working during July and August, but not having that regular meeting cycle actually gives staff a break, gives council a bit of a break in terms of the regular meeting cycle. Many of our committees still and task forces and so on continue working. Certainly our constituency work continues. But I think having that break has been in place for many years. I know certainly our lower tier council in Kitchener's case has been doing that for my whole time on Kitchener Council, and many of the Kitchener folks will, including yourself, will remember that. And so I think, one of the things we should be maybe looking at is moving the June 8th and 16th dates to June 1st and 9th, and then maybe the July dates to the 22nd and 30th, so that we're not breaking or not losing another round of meetings, but rather allowing that 6-week gap that we've traditionally tried to keep in the schedule, which is also consistent with approaches from our provincial and federal colleagues, and in fact, most municipalities across Canada.
Thank you. Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. My feeling is that, as Councillor Strickland has pointed out and Councillor Urbanovic, I think we need to have a little more discussion with regards to this. I too think that the break is a good thing. As a former ward councillor in the city of Cambridge for 22 years, we always had a break during the summer time as well. But if there was a situation that arose that needed council's attention, well, then a meeting was called, and now, of course, with the COVID, we could call a Zoom meeting if we had to in a situation like that. But I'd like to hear a little more from the rest of council on this. Like I said, I favor what Councillor Strickland said, and I do appreciate what our clerk has laid out, because it's important as well. But I do think that the break is a good thing. Thanks.
Councillor Strickland.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments, and I certainly do appreciate the clerk's suggestion and the staff motivation to try to make our meetings more efficient and productive. But I would also like to say that this Super Tuesday approach is something, I guess, I don't know, the passage of time, maybe it's not as new as I think it is, but previously we had standing committees and we didn't have a committee of the whole, and we didn't have this Super Tuesday kind of conundrum. So when you talk about alleviating the pressure from our Tuesday committee meetings by changing the schedule, the other thing you really need to look at is the structure of our committees and how we move to a committee of a whole from standing committees, because previously not all council sat on all committees. So you would have a separate meeting for community services, you had a separate meeting for planning works, a separate meeting for administration and finance, and not all council sat on all of those committees. So when you talk about changing the schedule in order to move away from Super Tuesday, I think there's more of a structural question there and how our committee is organized and how much work we need to do now compared to what we had to do in the future. So that would be my comment. And then what I would suggest, Madam Chair, is that based on what I've heard is that defer this back to the chairperson, back to your office and the committee chairs, and maybe we could get together with the support of the clerk and come back with a revised based on the input we've heard today and other input between now and next committee cycle.
Okay, so there's been a suggestion that this report be deferred. The committee chairs review it with the chair and the clerk. Is everybody amenable to that? I would have to say that I've heard a couple of things, but one of them was that people generally would still like the July break. Is that right? Can I see sort of a nodding? Okay. Councillor Urbanovic, did you want to speak again?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, if we know that the issue is we would still like the break, I think, there's a fairly easy solution to that. I mean, if there's a broader review that's being undertaken, then quite frankly, I think we should have that conversation here in public, and it shouldn't be just limited to a few of us, and then make those changes. So that would be my view. But as I indicated earlier, I thought there, there was a very easy date change that could be made, as I suggested earlier. And I'm prepared to, if we don't have a deferral, to move that.
Okay, Councillor Foxton?
Councillor Ivanovic, are you going to make a friendly amendment to the motion?
Well, deferrals take precedent, Councillor Foxton.
Oh, okay.
Well, it hasn't been moved and seconded yet,
So
so.
would you like to make a friendly amendment first?
Councillor Renz?
Well, didn't Councillor Strickland move that? No?
Councillor Strickland?
So just further to Councillor Urbanovic's comments, no, my intention wasn't to have the committee chairs and the regional chair look at the structure of the committees as they are. It would be limited to setting up a committee schedule based on the conversation here today. But you suggested that if we move 2 committee dates, that would create a 3-week break.
That would create actually a 6-week break. So we took the June dates and moved them back a week, and then moved the July meeting dates to the 23rd and 30th. That would still create this, works out to 5 or 6 weeks in between, which is a bit of a normal break.
I'm fine with that. That's all I was hoping to achieve.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do we have consensus then that it would be the new committee rotation as written, cognizant that we will be reviewing this in a few months, and we would move June meetings to the 2nd and the 9th, the 23rd and the 30th, and that would then open up July to no meetings? Councillor Jowett.
Well, I was just getting ready to turn off my mic because you were going into a place. So I just wanted to remind people, not everybody has the same circumstances. I have another job. This one is called a part-time job. And so I do like my little break. I'm getting to that age now. So I would prefer if we could continue having our little bit of a summer break, and I wouldn't want to leave my summer in the hands of an executive group of any sort. So I'd rather see that discussion happen here and now. Thank you.
Are you happy with the suggestion that there be 2 cycles in June and you would get July off?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're good with that.
Very much so.
And I think, I honestly believe in openness and transparency. I think this has been a good discussion. One of the things that we did consider is the fact exactly what Councillor Jowett said, which is lots of you have other jobs, and it's a balancing act. And being a member of council takes a lot of time. There's so much preparation. There's so many other meetings that happen and times when people have, you talk to your constituents. And so it's a very demanding job. And it was hoping to acknowledge that lots of people have other jobs. Most of us have families and other demands. And so we're balancing all of that. So that was really looking at streamlining it. So with that change, this then is moved by Councillor Strickland, seconded by Councillor Bravanovic. As amended, all those in favor, please use your icons, and those in council chambers. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Other matters under consideration: asset management training program, FCM. This is moved by Councillor Jowett and seconded by Councillor McGarry. And the recommendation is that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo take the following action with respect to the asset management training program as described in report TS-20-04/COR-ADM-20-04. There is A, B, and C as written under there. One is to apply to a grant opportunity through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. The B is to commit to undertake activities proposed in the application to FCM. And the third one is to commit $100,000 plus applicable taxes towards the cost of this initiative for software development. I see no speakers, so all those in favor, please use your icons for yay or nay, and those in the chamber, they're getting very fast. They've already voted. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. I'll now entertain a motion for the Committee of the Whole to rise and Council to resume. This is moved by Councillor Harris and seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Again, use your yes or no buttons, and in the council chamber, thank you. Vote yes. That is carried. A motion to adopt the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. This is moved by Councillor Rentz, seconded by Councillor Strickland. Please again use your yes and no buttons, and those in the chamber signify that in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Any motions? Notices of motion. Unfinished business. Other business. Tim, you have other business? Oh, Councillor Galloway.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a small other business item. It's come to my attention from a constituent who did a little bit of sleuthing on this, that the MTO maintains the interchanges on Highway 403 through Brantford to a completely different standard than they maintain the interchanges in and around Waterloo Region. And I'm not sure whether or not the city of Brantford pays the MTO something additional to go above and beyond their maintenance levels that they might normally maintain. But apparently their interchanges along the 403 are much better kept. And of course, ours, we know we get a lot of complaints, although it's not our road, with litter and weeds and everything else. So I'm just wondering if staff could look into that to see if in fact this is true, that the city of Brantford gets a higher level of maintenance in their highway interchanges through the MTO, whether or not there's an additional cost that the city of Brantford gives to the MTO to do that, and whether or not it's an option that we might be able to consider here in Waterloo Region.
Mr. Schmidt, would you like to comment or take it under advisement?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can take a look at that and get back to Councillor Galloway.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other business. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to enact the bylaws first, second, and third readings. This is moved by Councillor Strickland and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Again, I would ask you to use your yes and no icons if you're voting remotely, and to signify if you're in favor in the chamber. Tim's in favor of that too. That's carried. Thank you. I now would entertain a motion to adjourn, and this is moved by Councillor Harris and seconded by Councillor Lorentz. Please use your yes and no icons and signify your support in the chamber. All right, guys, that was the fastest vote of the night. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, colleagues.
Good night, everyone.
Good night now.
Right.
Hasta la vista.
Hi, everybody.